let's get started and show you how to use KIT OPS PARALLAX to create your own one plane room. So I've started off in a brand new scene, and what I'll do is I'll go to the KIT OPS PARALLAX add-on and I hit this button called Load Parallax Template File, and this will come up. And as soon as this comes up, the very first thing I want to do is if I hit save, you'll see it can't save because it's a read-only file. So I want to actually save it as. So I'm going to do a save as, and I'll go and let's call it test. There we go. So now we have this. So that's the first thing we do. Now the second thing we want to do is we want to size our room, the room that we're going to use. To do this, we use step one in our room size in meters. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to tell how big to make it. So what I typically do is I'll go over here, and you'll have this actually, you'll have this insert in the one of the KPACKS. So I'm going to go into Loft Arch, and I'm going to grab this man. And with this selected, I'm going to just add the insert. Maybe hold the Alt key down, rotate him around, something like that. So now I have kind of an idea of how big a 50% human male is in this room. So now I'll select the room again, go back into KIT OPS PARALLAX, and let's just make this 4 meters across, and we'll do 4 meters deep, and I'll make it 2.7 meters high. So there we have it. So then you can see now we've changed the dimensions of it quite a bit. One thing to be aware is that these must be entered in meters. You can't actually enter them in feet. So if you need to do the conversions, do that elsewhere, but make sure that you end up with them entered in meters. What I want to do now is I want to add some checkerboard materials here because I want to show you a little bit about how some of this works. So I'm going to select this first object here. I'll go to KIT OPS. I have this checkerboard material. I'll just say add material, and we'll add that to there. And then I'm going to grab the back one and I'm going to do the same exact thing. So now we have some different checkerboards on both, and we'll be able to show you kind of the workflow as we move through this. So let's go ahead and render our first parallax object. Before I do that, I need to make sure that this object is set to one of the sprites. So I'm going to put it on sprite 1, hit the M key, and I'll just move him to sprite 1. And then with that done, we're going to move on to step 3. We're going to skip step 2 because we'll come back and we'll design this room later. But I want to kind of show you what this is going to look like and some of the pitfalls that you may run into. So we'll hit the parent all objects now. That'll make sure that this is a parent of this. And then we'll set the room scale for render. Now, why do we do this? Well, we need to have everything square for the cross map because we're going to use this cross map in order to generate our parallax material. Once we have the room scale set for rendering, we can move on to the next step. And one thing I definitely want to show you is that we can also always click this button to go back to our original working scale, which is where we are here. So keep that in mind. Now, if we want to, we can do some tests. Like for instance, if I want to test that sprite 1 channel, I can click here and it's going to render for me that sprite 1, and that's what it looks like. It's compressed in the X dimension because that's the way that CrossMap does it, but it'll uncompress it when we end up rendering the material. So I'll show you that in a second. With that done, let's prepare for step 6. We're going to open up a folder full of images. So this is a temp folder, and it's the folder that will store all the rendered images to. And because it's temp, as soon as you quit Blender, all these images will go away. So let's move this like this, and I'm going to kind of move this over here so we can kind of see what's going on. Okay, and so what I'll do is I'll just hit this render all. Let's view this by extra large icons. So I'll hit this render all button over here, and while it stays blue, it's going to start rendering all 9 sprites. So remember, we have all of these left, right, ceiling, floor, sprite 1, sprite 2, sprite 3, sprite front. Now we are also using a world object that has actually a little bit of ambient lighting to it, and that's why we can see this. We don't have any lighting in this scene, but we have this world object that has a little bit, so that's okay. Well, okay, so you can see we're done now, and here are all the images that we've rendered. And so they're all named right, left, floor, and they're EXR images, so that means they have a higher bit depth, and that's important when we get ready to composite. So let's go back in here, and now that we're back in here, what I'll do is I'm going to hit this button that says create cross map, and it'll pretty instantaneously create this cross map, and this is what it looks like. So as you can see, it's pretty much as you might expect. Here's the right side, the left side. Here's the sprite 1, sprite 2 is empty, sprite 3 is empty, sprite 4 is empty. Here's the back in the middle. So the next thing we want to do is create the material and the object. So I'm going to click on here, and you'll see that we've just done that. Now, as you can see from this view, everything looks pretty good. But now watch when I start moving it around. So if I start moving it, let's go into our, I'm going to go into the layout view for us. And you'll start to see that these lines here are kind of crazy. Look at the ceiling. So as I tilt it back, notice the ceiling lines, these lines going back in what I call the Y direction on the model aren't lining up. And so what does that tell us? That tells us, if possible, we don't want to have any Y lines. These are the Y lines going back in this direction on the back, top, or bottom surface, the floor or the ceiling. So try and keep Y lines off of that. And also, there is a line showing a demarcation between the two. So that means that we definitely are going to have a hard time stitching up a perfect texture across these two surfaces. So those are a couple things to keep in mind. Just, make sure, I tell people, when in doubt, just don't use any Y repeating patterns. But if you're going to use them, they should be on the right and left and the ceiling and the floor of the first object. Once we're done with this, we hit this back to model scene. And now we're back where we started. Let's rotate this around. There we go. There we go. And so now we're back to where we started. So that's a real quick overview of the process. Now let's get into detail. Let's go ahead and create something of interest. Okay, so before we design, let's talk a little bit about how this whole thing works. So I'm going to hit the numpad 0 key and go into my camera view here. And let's move this up and we'll grab the timeline. And you'll see we've got different keyframes here. One is called sprites, and all of the sprites and the sprite layers are rendered in this very first keyframe. So if we go to the second keyframe, you'll see this is the back room. So this is what's going to render in the back room. We're going to hide all the sprites and render the back room. Go to the third one, and this is the right wall, the left wall, the ceiling, and the floor. And so I just want to share that with you so that you understand a little bit about how this works. We render each one of these into a file, and then we create what's called a cross map. And let's look at that in a little bit more detail. So here is a cross map. This is a 3000 by 3000 pixel image, and it's got the ceiling, the floor, the right and the left, and the back. And then we have in the top left corner, sprite 1, sprite 2, sprite 3, and sprite 4. And the fourth sprite always is on the front of the room. So you would use it for blinds, curtains, decals, neon open signs, those kinds of things. That will always show up on the very front of the parallax object. So let's look at the actual object itself. And to do that, you'll see that we have 3 different scene files. We have a materials file, we have a model file, and we have make cross. You never really ever need to go in the make cross. The model file is where we are right now, and that's where we model things. And then we have the material file, and the material file is where we created this, as you recall. So let's take a look at this in a little bit more detail. Let's go in here and let's look at this object. So this is called cross map EXR. So this is the cross map for this object over here. And this is the material. Let's switch cross maps here a little bit. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to use a different one, which is this one. And to change it, I'm going to actually tab into this area and I will just choose that one we just did. Now notice this is a ping file. You can use ping files or EXRs. It doesn't really matter. So there's a ping file. So I'm going to tab back out of this. And now you can see that we have a different parallax object created. Now if we look at this, we'll see that in the background, we have already this little metal robot guy with the words back, but we have these other sprites. We call them sprites, layer channels. And in here, they're called cutouts. Cutout 1, cutout 2, cutout 3. And then of course, the fourth one is this one on the front. That's this bottom left-hand corner one. So these position things are things that we can use to position our cutouts. So if we look at cutout 1 and we move it, you'll see that it actually moves closer and farther back. And if we look at cutout 2, same thing, closer and farther back. Z component is where all that moves out. Notice this guy here is floating. And if I want to drop him down, I can keep dropping him until he actually hits the ground. But sometimes, if I want to put him way in the back, I will actually adjust it way in the back, and then I can adjust the height. And the higher I make it, the farther back it appears he goes, because these characters, none of these sprites generate shadows, and that way you can move them anywhere you want. But it also means something else, something that we tell people: always create your floor with a dark color, so that way the lack of a shadow isn't so apparent. Now you can also use the X dimension to move your sprites back and forth, left and right. And if you really want to get rid of them completely, just move them completely off the scene. So that works as well. You can't really do anything again with this front sprite, but the rest of them you can manipulate how you like. Once you're done, of course, it's a simple matter just to go in here and say create insert, and KIT OPS will automatically pack the image for you and create an insert. And then you just hit the button to render a thumbnail and you're good to go. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's really the anatomy of a parallax object. So one thing I'd like to mention is that typically with KIT OPS Parallax, you don't need to move between scenes using these controls up here. You'll always have this button that says back to model scene, and you click that and now you're back on the model scene. So now what we want to do is we want to talk about how do we create a room that actually looks pretty good. And first thing I'll mention is KIT OPS Parallax works really well with KIT OPS, both free and pro. Now, when you get KIT OPS Parallax, it will come with these 5 different KPACKS, all these little green icons: Loft Accessories, Loft Architecture, Loft Furnishings, Loft Graphics, and Loft Materials. And you can use KIT OPS Free to add any of these to your models, and it'll work great. But if you have KIT OPS Pro, you can not only add them to the models, but you can also do some things. There's some snapping features that you have. But most importantly, if you want to save your parallax object and reuse it with KIT OPS, you're going to need to have KIT OPS Pro. So one thing you're going to want to be able to find is the KIT OPS Parallax documentation. It's really easy. Just check out the link in our description, and in there's a lot of information about things like how to install the Parallax add-on and much more. And in particular, you might want to jump down to this techniques and tips area, because there's a lot of interesting things there that you might want to be aware of as you're designing your own room. The other thing I'll mention is that if you're not familiar with KIT OPS, you should jump over to the KIT OPS documentation as well, and there's a video manual as well. And you can go to the part that says to install KPACKS, learn about how to install the KPACKS. You can also learn how to install KIT OPS Pro or free. There's a whole bunch of information in here. Also, you might want to check out that we have these updates, regular updates, probably maybe once every month or two. You're probably going to want to look at those, and there's little videos for each one of these that will share with you what these new updates are about. And there's some pretty cool features in these that we're going to actually show as we start to design our room. Okay, so let's go ahead and start designing our room. So what we'll do is first we're going to go into the Loft Materials, and you can see that we have all these different materials that we can work with. And I am going to choose the carpet, add a carpet material to that. And I think that that's obviously not what we want, but I'll just keep adding materials because I know that I'm going to use them in different slots. I'll use the dark concrete. I'm going to use some dirty wood. I'm going to use a dirty brick, and I'll probably be using some acid steel in here. Maybe definitely be using the ceiling. So with these already set up like this, I'll want to give this a base material, and the base material for this, I might go ahead and just use the KIT OPS materials, the free ones that come with KIT OPS. And if we go through here, we can look and see that we have a dark matte and a light matte, and some other things in here. So I might use the let's add the light map, and let's go ahead and add a white matte, and we'll add the dark map, and then I'm going to add a dark shiny material as well. And with this all set up like this, I can go into my materials, and I'll just choose for our basic material this light matte right here. So that's where we're going to start off. Now we're going to do the back room next after we configure the front room. So I'm going to tab into this, and I will just select this surface, and I'm going to add another slot to this, and I will assign that ceiling surface, and I'll go in here and I'm going to just choose the ceiling. So that's that. And then I'll go over here on this wall and I'll create another slot. I think I'll do a dirty brick pattern on that. And then on the floor, we're going to assign a new material, which is going to be the carpet material. And on this side, I think we're going to actually add, let's add another material. Let's just go ahead and hit the assign. Let's create a slot and assign. And because I don't think we added that material, I'm going to put a special kind of concrete over there. So let's tab out of this and deselect everything. And we'll go in here and we'll add the smooth concrete material. And what I'll just do is go over, select this object. We have our last slot, and we'll just go ahead and add the smooth concrete into that. And now we have our front area that looks actually pretty good. I like the contrast that we have going on there. Now let's do the same for the back area. Now, before we do that, let's talk about the back area. We don't ever want to mess with the front area. So we have the dimensions. We can adjust the dimensions up here, but we don't really want to do much with that. I mean, I can cut some holes and windows in it, but I don't want to change the geometry. But the back area, I can do anything I want. And for instance, let's go ahead and with this back area, we're just going to assign a material like smooth concrete. So we'll put that in the back area, and then I can come in to my KIT Ops, and let's look at my arc collection. I've got a lot of different things in here, and so I might want to go ahead and cut out some stairs. So with this selected, I'm going to add this insert. I can move it around the way I want to. So I think I'll put some stairs maybe right in here. So now you can see I've got stairs, but it goes all the way through, which I really would prefer that we see something else back here. So there's a lot of ways we can deal with that. I can just put a box around that if I want to. So I can tab into this object right here. And when I do that, let's turn off this solidify here so I can see what I'm doing. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another loop cut here and just move it to the little, kind of to the side of this. And then with that, I can just take this and say E and extrude it completely out like this. And then as we look inside, we'll see that we still have it cut nicely. And now we have this back area, and I might be able to just take this and just move it in so that now I need to go up higher because this thing needs to have a little bit of a higher area, and I might want to punch it up a little higher on here too, 7.5, and I'll look at this and hit knife tool, and let's just cut between those, hit return, and we can move this up as well, so something like that, and we're starting to see how that works. So what I'm trying to show you is that I can actually add a lot of different kinds of things to this geometry in the background to give it a little bit more visual interest. Let's go ahead and look at see what else we have. We also have a hallway we can throw in here. So I'm going to tab out of this, add this insert. We'll put the hallway. Let's put the hallway like over here. And I've got some things like these pillars, and I'll add a pillar insert somewhere like over here, and maybe throw another one like right in the middle of this right here, something like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. Remember we talked about earlier about making sure the floors are dark. So I'm going to come in here again, and I'm going to tab into this, and I'm going to select the floor, and I'll go under select similar coplanar, and with that done, I'm going to go ahead and hit this plus button and assign that, and I'm going to give that a shiny floor like this SY dark shiny. You probably don't want to have a shiny floor in the front. In the back, it actually works pretty good because all the reflections always come towards you, and they're going to be mapped correctly once it gets rendered. So another thing to notice is that we are set this up with scene lighting and scene world in EEVEE. But if I render this in Cycles, which is what we end up rendering, you see that it's very dark. So we're going to need to deal with the lighting here in just a second. But for now, let's just keep on working through this. At this point, we have our materials and our geometry set up the way we like it. And so the next phase is to start adding some accessories to this. So we're going to go back into our loft arch, and I'll grab some furnishings, and let's just go ahead and select this, and let's add a chair in here, and let's maybe add a table. And maybe that table goes right up against the wall or something. And let's see what else we have. We have these pipes. I'm going to grab some of these pipes, and I'm going to stick those back in here. Let's put them. We'll just stick them like this on the side there. Maybe Shift X, move them over to this side as well. So we have them sitting there. And maybe we'll add one chair, another chair. Put that right here. Hold the Alt key down. We can rotate it around how we like. Let's go to the accessories. We have some lights in here, and I think we'll put a light over this table. I'll drop it right there, something like that. Make sure it's positioned correctly. Let's add another light here, and we'll just move it up a little bit, and we'll move it back, something like so. And we have this kind of a light, and we can add him also back in one of these areas. If I want to, I can just hit this mirror on the X. We'll put another one over on that side, so that's good. Now let's go ahead and add some pictures and stuff. So we'll take this, and let's add him on this surface right here. So I'm going to basically need to turn off, remove the KIT Ops props, and we'll add the insert on here. So we'll stick him something like so. Let's see what else we have. Let's take these and stick them over on this wall here. Maybe scale them up a little bit. And I'm going to take these blinds, I'm going to add them right on the top here. So I'll select the front of this, and I'll say add insert, and they'll come right in. I'll put them right on the inside here, something like that. Move them to the center, and with them selected, I can turn off regular mode, select this object right here, go into my modifiers, And I can adjust the number of blinds I want in there. So that's kind of cool. We'll go back to smart mode. I'm going to go back into the architecture area now. I'm going to add another wall, or let's add this emergency exit. Actually, let's put that over here. Delete that. We're going to add that right here. So I'm going to put that right there. So there's some kind of door. Also, I'm going to add another wall here, and I'm going to put it in the back area. Hold the Alt key down, and I think I'll set it right about there. Yeah, make it kind of tall so it kind of goes up high, and then I can add another light. In fact, this light back, well, I just take this light here. Let's move it forward so it's kind of in front of that wall right there. Something like so. There we go. Let's add some ceiling lights. So I'm going to go over here and select my object, and we're going to add light here. I'm going to rotate it and shrink it a little bit, and we'll stick it right here, and then I'm going to just mirror it about the x-axis, so we put another one there, so we have these little ceiling lights in here. And let's go ahead and add a couple wall switches. These are just little switches that we'll see give us a little tiny detail. And I'm going to basically take and I'm going to put some graphics on this wall like it's some kind of warehouse painting thing. So I'm going to go in and let's grab this Coca-Cola, this round Coca-Cola, and I'll select this object, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to make it large. And so that looks okay. But what I'll do is I'll go in here, and in my shader editor, with this selected, I'm going to adjust the erosion. So watch what happens. So it kind of erodes nicely into that, as you can tell. And then I'm going to go down here and into the color. I'm going to basically select, this brick color, and then I will I can turn it, I'm going to give it a little bit, just hint it a little bit so that the brick color is kind of coming through. So, and then what I want to do is let's go ahead and view it in cycles, see what it's going to look like. So you can see it's kind of broken up kind of nicely there. So put some other things on the walls if I want. Actually, let's go ahead and use some pictures, accessories. So let's grab this set right here, pull these over here like this. We're going to need to select this, and we need to remove KIT OPS props. And then we can add an insert to this. This is some kind of chalkboard of some kind. And maybe we'll put a clock on the wall as well. Punched out just a little bit so we have a clock there. To this, we'll add this open neon. Put that right in here. And I think that's pretty good. I think we're in pretty good shape. Now I just need to move some things around. So I'll right click on this and I'll say relocate insert. And I can move them around wherever I want. I might just stick him back in the corner somewhere. Let's go G, Shift Z. Let's move him back in this corner somewhere like this. Yeah, that'll be all right. And then with our desk, let's right click and say relocate insert, and we can move it here, and I can hold the Alt key down and rotate it as I'm moving it, and then I can say Shift D, Shift C, relocate insert. We'll move it over here. We'll rotate it around with the mouse wheel and put it something like over here like this. So let's take a look and see what kind of sprites we have, our sprite planes are looking like here. So we have, of course, the front sprite, which is fine. Then we want to have our first level sprites. And I think let's move this up here. Let's set the first level sprites up so that it's this and this and this. Actually, let's just use these two. So I'm gonna select this, say M, move it to sprite 1, select this, M, move it to sprite 1. This is gonna be sprite 2. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna kind of cheat this, right? So I'll come in here and I'm gonna shrink it this way because we're gonna render it from this view. So we're not gonna really be able to tell. In fact, I can do that with pretty much all of these and they'll actually render better. So I'll go ahead and do that anyway. This is sprite 2. This is sprite 2. We said this is sprite 1. And let's move this closer. And then let's just make that sprite 2 as well. So we'll put that on sprite 2. And then over here, this object right here, I'm going to make that sprite 3. Sprite 3. Make sure that you're in smart mode when you're doing this so you're selecting the right things. And this right here, he goes to room. So everything else that I don't have selected now is going to go to room. And so let's go ahead and I'm going to save this and let's kind of take a look at what happens when I go into KIT OPS and I say let's set room scale for render. So you'll see a lot of this is not working right, and that's because we haven't either parented or we haven't assigned it as the room. So let's go back to the working scale, and now I just need to go say, set this to room, set that to room. I just need to find all the things that aren't going and make sure I set them to room. That and like this, here's this, set that to room. These lights, set them to room, all these pictures, room. So make sure that everything that is attached to one of these walls is set to the room. And then, let's make sure this is I think we set this to room already, but we'll do that. So then I can say parent all objects and then set room scale. Now let's look at it. So what do we have? We still have a few things that weren't set correctly. And so let's go back and fix that. Okay, parent all objects. Okay, real quick, let me talk about parenting. Notice that this table right here is in this collection. And if I take this collection and I drag it up and I put it into Sprite 3, now it's in the Sprite 3. And then when I hit parent all objects, I'm going to get this error. And it says, please delete the collection table from collection Sprite 3. And that's because we can't have collections inside the sprites. And it's really simple. Just go over here to this table and hit delete, and you're not deleting the file, you're just deleting that. And now when I parent all objects, it's going to work just fine. So that's the first thing. Let's undo that. And now I'm going to take this same table and I'm going to make an instance to the scene. So that means that we have another table, and this first table, let's just turn that off so we don't see that. So this right here, if I say move that to Sprite 3 and I say parent all objects, I'm going to get another error, and it says please make collections instances real. So what does that mean? Well, it means we select this and we go up here and we say object, apply, make instances real. And once we've done that, and now we parent all objects, it's going to work. And lastly, I'll just tell you that if you have a parent of an object that's an empty, it's not going to work either. So those are the three things you got to watch out for. Set room scale for render. Look at that. Now we're in pretty good shape. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to work with the lighting. So let's go ahead and here's the deal. With lighting, you might want to work in this mode. So I'm going to turn on cycles and we can start to see what's going on with the lighting. And so if I go into KIT Ops, I might just go ahead and just pump up some of the lights. Like for instance, I can get these lights, turn off regular and just select the white. And you'll see I've got, let's see, a 3. So let's make it 12. You'll see that punches it up quite a bit more, maybe 20. Yeah, that works a lot better. Remember that in cycles, you can use emissive materials to light things. Let's go grab this one, and here's the yellow emissive 5. Let's make it 15. So brighten that up. And then these is 3. Let's make them 15. So give them a little brighter image. So you're starting to see this is starting to come together nicely. I might want to add just a little bit more lights. Like you can see in the back rooms, there's not much there. So I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to say Shift A, and I'll add a light and I'll make it a point light, and I'm going to just move it all the way in the back. So and maybe move it forward a little more. Yeah, something like that. So, and then Shift D X, let's move it over here so we have it kind of in the stairwell too, so you can see there's the stairwell part. So that's pretty good. Now if I want to, I can go into my world and I've got an HDRI set up, and I'm just going to leave this alone, but I'm just going to punch this to 1, and that'll give me a little more lighting for the whole object. And I might go back into my carpet, and remember we talked about making it darker, so I may just drag this down, make the carpet just a little bit darker so that we don't have any shadow issues there. Okay, so let's assume that this is what we want, and I'll hit the save button at this point. Then I'll go into KIT OPS Parallax, and so I can do a test. So I might want to like test, let's say the Sprite 2, okay, and that looks pretty good. You can tell that looks really good. And let's say Sprite 3, again, looks pretty good. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I'm going to open up our folder again. I'm just going to go ahead, and with that folder open, I'll move this over like so, and I'll hit render all, and we can just watch as these things render. I don't need to delete them, but I think it's not necessary, but I will, just so we can see what's going on. Okay, let's go ahead and render all. Okay, we're back now, and you can see we have all of the sprites rendered correctly. So that looks great. So now we need to create our cross map. And once that's done, we create the material and the object. And there's our room. And you can see it actually looks pretty good. Now, at this point, I might want to go ahead and modify some things. Notice that this chair is not working right. So why is that? Well, that's because earlier, if you recall, I was fooling around with these. So I really want to just go ahead and zero this out, and I'm going to get that correct. And I might want to look and see how we're going to do on the ground, but I think that looks pretty good. I think sprite 3 looks like it's in pretty good positioning also. So you can see 1 is the max that it can go back. It's as far as it can go back. So we'll just leave that there. And it looks like it's in pretty good shape. And everything else looks good. So I like what we have. So next I'm going to go ahead and create a KIT OPS insert. And so with this selected, I hit this create insert, and then I'll say save insert, and I'll go into a folder. Let's call this Loft 01, and I'll save that insert. And then I'll say camera to insert, and let's just go ahead and look at what that looks like. That's what it looks like right there. So let's just rotate it around a little bit, something like this. And typically when I'm creating a thumbnail for these guys, what I'll do is I'll go over here and I'll turn off the floor, right? So I just don't want to render the floor. Then I'll say render thumbnail, then close factory scene. Now let's open up a new version of Blender. And with this set like this, let's just kind of stretch it out a little bit like this, maybe this side, whatever. And we'll go into KIT OPS. Let's find that insert we just rendered, which is right here, Loft 01. And I'm going to go just basically hit add insert, and I'll drop it down like so. And with this selected, let's go back in and we'll add our wooden guide just for scale reference. And you can see that looks pretty good. That's just the default dropping it in. We've got a pretty nice scene. The parallax component works really good. Okay, we're back in this scene. As you can see, I've adjusted it a little bit. I moved this third sprite up a little bit because sticking it on the back wall doesn't solve any problems for us. We could have just put it back there and rendered on the back wall. So I moved it up. We'll still get a little bit of a parallax effect. Now, another thing I'll point out is that if I select this object, I can adjust the depth of the room with the Z scale feature. So if I do this, you'll see that I'm making the room deeper. So I can continue to adjust this even after I create the parallax map. I can adjust it all day long this way as well. Just want to let you know. I added a laptop computer on the desk, did a couple little minor tweaks, but nothing serious. So what I want to show you now is how to add a glass plane on the front of it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go into KIT OPS and I'm going to turn off the KIT OPS props for this particular plane. Remember that what we're looking at is literally a single plane. We'll go back in here. We're in EEVEE now. And I'm going to go into our KIT OPS Loft Arch. And I've got this thing called Glass 1x1. And I'm going to snap to the center. And with this selected, I'll just add the insert like so. And now it's added. And now I'm going to click this, expand to the width, expand to the height. And now, as you see, look how nice that is. We have a kind of a glass window on the front of this. So that's something that you can add at the very end. You can put it in with your insert if you want to, or you can just add it later. I like to add it later because you never know exactly what you want to do with the insert. So that covers it all. If you have any questions, check us out on our Discord server. And I hope you enjoy this and look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day, and we'll see you online.